Hey guys, so this is kind of spontaneous, but I decided to start a reading vlog. With school starting soon, I don't think I would be able to um, do full-on book reviews, although I still might if I have the time. So I thought I would just start a reading vlog so that you could kind of join me in my journey of reading certain books. I'll have the titles of the books that I'm reading in the description so that you know what I'm reading and kind of get to choose and pick what you'd like to watch. I guess to start off, I just finished listening to two audiobooks. One is Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. So I've read The Giver, which was also written by Lois Lowry. I read it before and I really loved it, and so I thought I'd give this book a shot. And Number the Stars was really good. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but it was really good. Lois, Lois Lowry's writing is just, they just have a way of describing things that just makes you feel things, like I was scared, like in so many parts of the story, like I'm not gonna spoil it, but there were just so many parts of the story that had me on the edge of my seat, and I owe it to Lois Lowry's writing, and it was just a really good book. The second audiobook that I just finished listening to, actually just yesterday, was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I forgot the author's name. I think it's R.L. Stevenson. I'm pretty sure he also wrote Kidnapped. I might be wrong, but I didn't enjoy Kidnapped. But I did love The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Again, more than I thought I would. So I've been listening to mostly classics as audiobooks. I like to read the books that I actually, enjoy, through words instead of written words instead of listening to them. So I've been listening to some classics recently, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde might be one of those books that I will just have to read, actually read in the future. It had kind of a slow start, but it picked up really fast. Like, things just escalated so quickly, and I was genuinely scared in some parts. Like, it was hecka creepy. I mean, the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has become so popular that almost, I think everyone already knows what the big reveal is towards the end. But there was a discussion on the duality of human nature towards the end that was really, really interesting. So if not for the story, because I guess some people would be like, oh, I know what Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are. They're actually, But pick it up for that reason. There's a really interesting discussion towards the end. I highly recommend it to you, everyone. So currently I'm reading Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend. So Nevermoor is kind of a new series that's come out, I guess, in recent years. I don't know when exactly, but I'm reading the first book. It's Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. There's also a second book, and then there will be a third book coming out this year. But the reason I decided to pick up Nevermoor, even though I have a really long TBR, is because almost every middle grade booktuber that I've watched has recommended it. I've watched I think 7 middle grade book recommendations, and Nevermore was in every single one of them. So it's like, whew, this has got to be something really good. And I've heard from a lot of these reviews that it could be the next Harry Potter. Honestly, I'm a little bit skeptical of that because, Harry Potter. People have been saying that it's both unique and really familiar. There's some familiar tropes that are used in Nevermore, but at the same time it's still unique. And so I'm only 5 chapters in, I think, and the first few chapters I was like, oh man, this is really good. It hooked me immediately. But where I'm at right now, I mean, it's only 5 chapters in, but I'm slowly losing interest, I would say, because the story took a turn that I didn't expect. So when I've watched the reviews for Nevermore, honestly, the plot didn't really intrigue me. So basically, it's this: it's Morrigan Crow. She's a cursed child. It's kind of in a different world. Bad things happen just because she exists, I think. And then she is eventually whisked away by this mysterious man into a place called Nevermore. That's pretty much it. And people don't like to spoil what happens, and so I haven't really gotten a good idea of what's gonna happen. What's the story about. I thought initially that it was like more of a fantasy. It's more fantastical, I would say. Maybe it will get more fantastical as I progress in the story, but I think I expected it to kind of be a little bit like The Land of Stories by Chris Colfer. But then there's a part where this mechanical creature thing arrives, and I was like, oh, so this is steampunk. So it's steampunk fantasy. I thought it would be more like wands and magicians and things like that. Because people said that it was like Harry Potter, but it's more steampunk. It has, so if you know The Peculiar by Stefan Bachman, I hope I'm saying that right. There's some, it's kind of like that. Although The Peculiar, the writing The Peculiar is like so poetic that it's not super accessible. The story was okay. The writing, it was beautiful, but it wasn't engaging. But Nevermore, the writing is really straightforward, really direct. I would say Nevermore, so far for me, is kind of a mix of Tahereh Mafi's Furthermore and Stefan Bachman's The Peculiar. It's kind of an odd mix, but also it's unique in its own way. I'll be continue to read Nevermore tonight, and on Tuesday, I'll start listening to Animal Farm by George Orwell on audiobook, and I say Tuesday because I do laundry on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that's when I listen to audiobooks because, laundry. Okay, so I'm about 2/3 of the way into Nevermore, and it's okay. There's a lot of plot holes and conveniences, and the storytelling is just really direct. It just tells you this happened and this happened and this happened, and there's not a lot of emotional depth. Actually, I think most of the characters are emotionless. Also, most of the characters are really inconsistent, and there's just a lot of things that I'm like, well, this could have happened or that could have happened. There's a lot of building up to this point. There's a lot of mystery involved, but it's kind of come to the point that it's not super satisfying because you have so many questions in your head and very few of them are being answered. This is definitely not Harry Potter. I don't think. It's got a nice story. Like the fantasy elements are there. The steampunk is there. The characters are they're not. You can't relate to the characters because everyone's just so vague, and there's a lot of like proper nouns, like big terms, and there's just so many names for places, for people, for everything that is so hard to keep track of. It's almost as bad as the Maze Runner in that respect, and the Maze Runner has a lot of proper nouns like floating around. But at least in the Maze Runner, they were all like pretty easy to remember, even though they were pretty much abused. But in Nevermore, you can't keep track of everything. Like there's some characters that whenever they come into the picture, I'm like, I don't even remember like what you are or who you are. Like I just know that you exist and you come every now and then. But up to this point, there's a lot of like really big reveals, and there were a lot of good parts. There were some parts that I was like really scared or really surprised, and I've gotten to a part where there's like a huge plot twist, and it wasn't super satisfying. It was like, oh yeah, I could kind of see that. Like I could have guessed that a long time ago, but yeah, I'll probably finish Nevermore today. I need to finish Nevermore today, and I think I will be able to do that because today's the last day of August, and tomorrow will be the start of September, and I'm trying to get into this kind of habit of trying to read one exclusive genre per month, and so tomorrow will be the start of Self-Help September, so I'm going to start reading self-help / business related books. It's not really my cup of tea, so I don't think I'll be able to read a lot of them. And for me, if I don't like what I'm reading, I'll probably like just finish at least one of the genre for the month and then go back to my usual mood reading. I'm reading The Eighth Habit by Stephen R. Covey because I've read Seven Habits and I really like that. Also, I'll continue to listen to audiobooks while I do laundry, and tomorrow I'll be starting to listen to Animal Farm, and so I'll update you guys on tomorrow on my final thoughts on Nevermoor, and then my initial thoughts on Animal Farm. So stay tuned. Okay, so I literally just finished reading Nevermoor, and I want to say it was okay, but I really actually enjoyed it. Right now I think I'd give it like a 4.5, 4.8 out of 5 stars. And here's the thing. I think it just had a strong start, really slow build up in the middle. I think it would be like the middle would have been more interesting if I was a younger reader, because there were just a lot of things that were happening that were interesting enough for me to just keep going, but it wasn't enough to get me engaged. But I think if I was a younger reader, I would be like super engaged and like, ready for the next thing to happen. The last bit was really powerful. A lot of things happened. It didn't feel like an info dump though, because it kind of referred to some of the things that happened in the middle, but everything had a purpose, leading up to the events in the last part of the book, which were really nice. But here's the thing. So this is the first book in a series. I've read that Jessica Townsend is planning like about 6 to 9 books total in the series. But here's the thing. This book is really similar to The Land of Stories. So The Land of Stories, the first book could be a standalone. The second book was a sequel that honestly could have been a standalone too, because the story began at some point and then ended at one point. Nevermoor, I don't think the story didn't feel finished, which I think is not super good for a first book, because even though if it's part of a series, because this whole book just felt like it was just building up everything that the rest of the series needed, and I wanted like something to be a complete, just like have a complete concept. So I will be reading the next book, maybe not this month, maybe later on if I get bored with the self-help books that I'll be reading starting tomorrow. But I will read Wondersmith, and then maybe Hollowpox when it comes out. This is a series that I will definitely follow, but maybe not because I'm super excited and engaged in the story, but just because I'm just genuinely interested in what's gonna happen. So that'll be it for Nevermoor for now. Okay, so I just finished listening to Animal Farm by George Orwell, and whew, that was something. So when I was in high school, we read like a summarized version of it, and I know it's a short book, but for some reason we read a summarized version of it, and I didn't really pay attention, so I honestly don't know or really understand like the references to world history and things like that, although I do know that Napoleon, like one of the pigs or the main characters, is Napoleon Bonaparte. And it was really interesting, and even without knowing like the political references, I think it was just a really fascinating, horrendous story about like deception in the government, and I think it's really relevant today, and I'm really happy that I listened to Animal Farm, because it was really insightful, and it's definitely a book that I think I'll be like reading like in a physical copy in the future, because there's just a lot of things to take away from it, and I'll be thinking about the story for a very long time after this. So I lied. I didn't pick up The Eighth Habit last night. I started reading another book called Awaken, the Healer in You by Bo Sanchez. It's also a self-help book, and it was shorter, so I was like, I'll just read this first. And Bo Sanchez, as I understand it, is a Catholic lay preacher. I'm pretty sure he's kind of a popular name in the Catholic community here in the Philippines. And I'm more than halfway through the book, and sorry, it's really hot in here, and I don't want to turn on the fan because, the audio. But it's just really radically optimistic so far, and there's a lot of things. I understand that it's a book that's been written a while back, but there's just a lot of parts that are like, man, I wish you don't
say these things anymore because a lot of the millennials are going to eat you alive. There's just a lot of things with relation to depression and exercise and body image that are like, I hope you don't keep teaching those things. But there were some, I wanted to dislike the book, but there were some things that were just, you know what, that's right, that's true, and that makes sense. And so I'll be finishing that today. I'll be listening to a book called Tuck Everlasting. Sorry, I had to pause the video because I was sweating really bad. Anyway, I'm going to start listening to a book called Tuck Everlasting. Honestly, I don't know a lot about this book. I know it's like a light romance. Maybe it's not a light romance. And I know it talks about family, like Tuck is the last name, pretty sure. I also know that it was adapted into a Disney movie. And the only other thing I know about it is that one of my friends who was on Goodreads like reviewed it and said, Tuck Everlasting walked so that Twilight can run. So that was interesting. So I put it in my TBR, and it's one of the shorter books on my TBR, so I'll be listening to that starting today. Also, after I read The Eighth Habit, I don't know if I'll be reading more self-help books because I'm kind of in the mood to read the next Nevermoor book, so I'll probably read Wondersmith next. So I finished reading Awake the Healer in You by Bo Sanchez yesterday, and my opinions are still pretty much the same. I thought it was really radically optimistic. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone. I do know that it is a faith-based book, and Bo Sanchez is a Catholic preacher, but honestly, I know some people feel like they have a hard time criticizing faith-based books, and I honestly think that criticizing like religious books, especially if they have the same beliefs as you, I think that's okay. They're honestly books that are written by members of my religion that I don't like and that only kind of like, and I think that's fine. I think we can still have our own opinions and dislike or like some things that the people of the same belief system have. I'm also 7 chapters into Tuck Everlasting, and so far I'm not seeing the romance elements yet. I think that will come later on. But where I'm at right now, I've seen that there is actually a magical element to it. I think it's a low fantasy. I don't know, that might change later down the road, but I'm liking it so far. I'm intrigued. The chapters are quite short, so I'm listening to it, and each chapter is about 5 minutes each, and since I listen to it at 2 times speed, it's a lot shorter than that, and there's only 26 chapters. So I think I'm going to be able to finish it on Wednesday, if not Thursday. I'm liking it so far. It's okay. I'm intrigued by the story, but I'm not like super engaged. I'm not like super interested that I want to know what happens next. It's just, okay, let's just keep going. It's kind of that kind of book. I'm also, I think 4 chapters in to The Eighth Habit, and honestly I don't know how I'm going to review it, especially with a reading vlog, because it's a self-help book, and I'm starting to realize now that self-help books generally say the same thing. There's a few differences or the way they present things, but generally they say the same thing. Although I'm loving The Eighth Habit now, because even though it does reference a few things from the seven habits of highly effective people, it's very unique. It's fresh. It focuses more on finding one's voice, which as a content creator, as someone who blogs about the church I belong to, and someone who likes to read, and there's book reviews and reading vlogs, that kind of thing, I feel like I've in a way found my voice, and it's really awesome to, I don't know, feel validated that this is what I need to do, and just really finding fulfillment in using that voice that you've been given. There's still a few references to a few of the things that were taught in the 7 habits of highly effective people that I absolutely love, that really have given me a fresh perspective on life and destiny and purpose. I know it sounds kind of cheesy when I say it that way, but what I'm really saying is I think these principles are really relevant in an age where we try to, especially younger people, we try to play the victim in almost everything. Like anything that happens to us, we just want to feel validated. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I think it's good to be aware of what we feel and what we think. However, if that brings you to a point where you feel like you have no choice, if you feel like you have no control over what happens next, then it becomes a problem. The Eighth Habit does a really good job at explaining that you have control. We are a product of our choices and not just nature or nurture. I don't know how much of the Eighth Habit I'll be explaining more of, but I'll continue to review it as well as Tuck Everlasting for the rest of the week, and then we'll see what happens next.
Okay, we're back to the setup, and forgive the fan because it's really hot in here. Anyway, so I didn't film yesterday, so nachos. Anyway, so I didn't film yesterday. So today I'm going to try to catch up a little bit on what happened yesterday, and then I'll tell you where I'm at with my reading right now. So yesterday I finished Tuck Everlasting, and here's the thing. It was good. It was okay. The writing was beautiful. The descriptions were beautiful. It was just a really chill book. It's the best way I could describe it. Really chill. The story is fascinating enough that you want, I enjoyed the story. But here's the thing. So, and remember, initially I thought that this was a romance, and later on, when I finished the book, I realized, well, this isn't really a romance, and I realized that the reason I thought that was because the film adaptations for Tuck Everlasting made it a romance, and that's because Winnie, the main character, kind of falls in love with, okay, I don't know if this is necessarily a spoiler thing, so I'm just gonna leave a timestamp for where to skip if you don't want to be spoiled. But here it is. So Winnie falls in love with one of the Tucks, Jesse, who I'm pretty sure is eternally a 17-year-old, and he's been a 17-year-old for over 100 years. I'm pretty sure he's 104 years old, so minus 17, so whatever that is. And Winnie is about Jesse's age in the film adaptations, but in this book she is a 10 or 11-year-old. Okay, and while there isn't really super cheesy romance towards the end, so there's a scene where one of the final scenes is Winnie helps May escape prison, and then she says goodbye to the Tucks. Oh, and also Jesse gives her a bottle or jar or whatever of the spring water which they drank to be immortal, right? And Jesse tells her, when you turn 17, drink it, and then you can come with us. He's telling a 10-year-old or 11-year-old this. And I don't care if you're an eternal teenager or if you're 104 years old. Either way, that's freaking creepy. A 17-year-old / 104-year-old, whichever, got the hots for a freaking 10-year-old. How is that okay? How is that right? In any way, shape, or form? And then before they ride off into the night, Jesse was like, remember me, Winnie. And I don't think Winnie, we really got what Winnie was thinking, but towards the end, so they learn later on, again, spoiler, but this is going to be skipped in the timestamp anyway, but they learn later on that Winnie died because she didn't choose to drink the water. Instead, she wasted it on this toad. I don't think she wasted it, but she was just having fun, as well as she was just thinking that there's the spring's right there, so I can just, if I change my mind, then I'll just do it then. But then eventually they bulldozed off the whole thing, and I don't know what happened to the spring water thingy. And then okay, and then the parents, they saw Winnie's gravestone, and they were like, "Oh, poor Jessie." I'm just so confused. I'm so conflicted. Anyway, it would have been an okay story if at least Winnie was maybe 16. Gosh, maybe 15, or better yet, 17. Because Jesse is an eternal 17-year-old, and so maybe he's stuck in that time, and he doesn't really, grow old, even though he's 100 years old. But if Jesse is a 17-year-old falling in love with a 10-year-old, while having the experience of a 104-year-old, that's just wrong. Anyway, that was kind of a longish rant. So I gave Tuck Everlasting 3 stars. Because I like the story. It's just one little detail just kind of ruined it for me. Anyway, I have a longerish rant. I hope this doesn't get too long. But I have a longerish rant for The Eighth Habit by Stephen R. Covey. So, last time I filmed, I'm pretty sure I was like, you know what? It's okay. It's kind of, but you know what? I'm learning things. I mean, that's what self-help is for. You learn things, you learn stuff, and you're inspired, and you help yourself. That's self-help. Here's the thing. So I've read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? And I liked it because I learned a lot, and each of the habits were just like, they were interrelated, and so there was some repetition of what was being taught, but they were still distinct. Here, oh my goodness, the 8th habit. So, honestly, I don't even know like where I'm at in the whole paradigm thing, because here's the thing. There's like this diagram. So in the 7 habits, there's like this diagram. We're now on this part of the diagram and this part of the diagram. In the 8th habit, there's this like model, and then here's what they did. There's this model, and then let's duplicate it into 4 different models, which is a part of a bigger model, and then each of the 4 models are pretty much the same, but each of the elements of those models have different names. And let's go through each one of them. That is the kind of repetition we do not need. Honestly, I only have like 100 pages left. That includes the appendix. I'm going to be really honest here. Self-help really isn't my genre. So if you love self-help, maybe you have a different perspective on this. Okay, remember how I said self-help is they just teach basically the same things. Just the way you present things is pretty much what matters. And in my Goodreads review of the monk who sold his I keep saying the monk who sold his shawarma because the author's name is Robin S. Sharma, and okay, it's the monk who sold his Ferrari by Robin S. Sharma. I initially didn't like the format because it's a self-help book, but it's in the form of a story, and basically it's this. There's this guy, and his boss, he's kind of a jerk. He's an alcoholic. He chases wild women and all this stuff. But then he goes to India or something, and then he lives with a village of monks, and then he learns the ways of, like a higher way of living. And he comes back, he's a changed man, and he's telling his whole story. I didn't like that initially, because why didn't you just tell me what you learned without having that little, pretty much useless backstory? I like that better than the 8th habit, because there's practically no structure to the 8th habit. It's just, okay. The 8th habit is pretty much find your voice and help others find their voices. But he inserts so much of the 7 habits of highly effective people and a bunch of repeated principles that you're just like, why is this even a book? It's not even, it doesn't feel organized. at all. I don't like the format of this book. And honestly, because of that, I'm not going to be reading another self-help book after finishing The Eighth Habit. I think I'll finish it tonight because it's only 100 pages, and you know what? Let's just get this over with. And I do not like to DNF books. I mean, I haven't encountered a book yet that I hated so much that I DNF'd it. I just dislike The Eighth Habit. It's just too much. Anyway, so I'll finish it tonight. It'll probably end up a 2-star. I don't hate it to the point that I give it 1 star. I have rated some books 1 stars before. 1 star, whatever. But you already know that I don't like it, so I'm not going to be talking about it in my next vlog. So after I finish The Eighth Habit, I'll be reading, because I need a refresher, and also I just really want to dive right into this story now. I'm going to be reading Wondersmith, the sequel to Nevermoor. Also, to kind of prepare for when the 3rd book of the series, Hollowpox, comes out in November. So I'll read Wondersmith, and then I don't think I'll still get back to self-help. I think instead I'll read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I don't know how you say that. It's an African name, I'm pretty sure. It is the last physical book that I own, that I found in this house, that I haven't read. And I am so proud of finally getting to it. It's only about 200 pages long, and I'm pretty sure it has mixed reviews, but we'll see what it's about. I honestly don't know what it's about. I just know it's set in Africa. And there's like 2 main characters that we kind of follow, and I think their stories intersect at some point, but that's pretty much all I know. And Wondersmith is about 500 pages long, and so I think that'll be enough amount of reading to kind of just like heal myself from self-help. Anyway, after that, if I'm feeling up to reading self-help again, I'll read The Secret. I'm pretty sure it's pretty popular. I saw it. I saw one of my uncles watch like a documentary thing that's kind of tied with the book, so I don't know, but it's the shortest self-help book on my TBR. Also, a little update, I finished listening to Tuck Everlasting. I'm now listening to James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl, and I'm listening to Taika Waititi's however you say his name, his reading on YouTube with a bunch of really cool actors and stars, and I think I just finished episode 6. It has 10 episodes. They're just really fast too, and they're so entertaining. Like honestly, after I finish listening to James and the Giant Peach, I probably won't be able to give like an honest rating of the book itself, just because I enjoy the reading so much. So I might give it a 5 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5 just because of how entertained I was, not because of the actual writing or the story. So we'll see where that goes. But also a quick update. This breaks my heart. But after so many months of practically no school's starting next week, and I have, if you don't care for this part, you know what, you can just end the video, but if you want to hit listen. Anyway, I enrolled for 20 units or credits, or however you say it in your school, and if you don't know what that translates to, that's 6 subjects total, and 4 of them are majors, so computer science majors. One's a major subject as well, but it's physics. I don't like physics. And then one's a minor subject. And so it's 20 units, and usually I only go for like 16, 17, 18 credits, because that's as much as my brain can handle. So it is going to be a wild semester. And it's only a 3-month semester. It's from September 10th to December 10th, and then it's finals week after that. And this is the first time that we're doing online learning at our university. So I don't know if things are going to be easier or if they're going to be more challenging. So depending on how everything goes, I might not be able to read as much as I'd like to. So the reading vlogs from now on, I don't know that I'd be able to do it on a weekly basis. Maybe until next week. Maybe I'll, because it's just the first days of class. But after that, I don't know if I'll be able to continue doing the reading vlogs, which sucks because I said I was gonna do the reading vlogs instead of full-on book reviews because it's easier. But I don't know that I can do that anymore. The reason may not be able to do them as much as I could because I won't be able to read as much as I'd like to. So here's what I'm gonna do. Every time I start a book or get to a halfway point of a book or finish a book, I'm gonna do a reading vlog and just talk about how my reading's going. But if not, I won't make a video, and I'll just wait till I have probably like 15-ish minutes length worth of a video before I kind of like edit them and then upload them. So it's not going to be on a weekly basis. It might be a monthly basis. Who knows? It might be just a 3-day basis, depending on how much I read, since I listen to the audiobook and that's faster too. But that will be my update. This is probably going to be this is going to be a long reading vlog. But anyway, if you do like this kind of content, it's so long, make sure to like this video, share, subscribe, recommend books to me, but make sure recommendations are worth it because my TBR is super long. Subscribe, yeah.